Hello, today I have the pleasure of speaking to my old friend Conor Gilsenan, or Gilly to his friends. I met Gilly many years ago when I first started playing at London Irish. Similar to myself, he has since transitioned from the world of rugby into the world of business, finding his current enterprise sales position via a brief stint on everyone's favourite sales competition, The Apprentice. Today he tells us all about his experience on television, how he sees clarity as the most important leadership skill, and how to overcome the struggles when leaving professional sport. Enjoy.
Conor Gilsenan, welcome. Thank you for coming along.
Thanks for having me. It's good to see you again.
It is a little bit of a muggy day, but hopefully we'll warm it up with our conversation.
Yeah, miserable day out there.
How are you doing, though?
Sure, we're going to be reminiscing about lots of great change room stories.
I'm sure we will.
That's the theme of the podcast, right?
Yeah, and also basically if there's anything we don't like or anything, it's it gets cut. This is not
it's not live. It's not live.
No, I'm anywhere near that level.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to try and jump straight into this. And you had, how long did you play for professionally?
9 seasons.
9 seasons. Across that period, what percentage of your potential do you think you achieved?
We really are jumping in.
Mm.
When I look back on my rugby career, I think the overwhelming feeling would be very proud of, that was my goal when I was like 15 years old to become a rugby player. So very proud to have achieved that. Got to play for my country underage. Captained my country under 19s. Played for my boyhood club, Leinster. Never got capped for the senior team, but still cool to go into the academy. And then I had 6 great years at London Irish and a little bit stint at Connacht. The overwhelming feeling was a sense of pride, but also underachievement. So, I was on the pathway to playing for Ireland. Had all the right resource and the opening to go and do that, but then ultimately didn't achieve that. So I don't never think I reached 100% of my potential. In short, I think there were periods of my career, like when I came out of school and I was pretty well, I would say tagged by the IRFU and Leinster to progress through the pathway and play for Leinster and potentially play for Ireland. That first year in the academy, I was playing for Ireland 20s, and I was thinking, I'm achieving my potential here. I'm right at the top of my game, and things were going really well. But then the difficult thing about sport is there's injuries, there's setbacks, coaches don't like you, and there's just this whole melee of things that you have to cope with in order to be successful. And probably didn't navigate them all as well as I could have. I think when I look back, doing all those extra 1%ers, I think there was guys like, I went into the academy with a guy called Josh van der Flyer, Dan Levy, and myself. We were kind of the 3 number 7s in the academy at the time. And I was in the year ahead of Josh and Dan. So I was kind of next in line. Yeah. And they're 2 unbelievable players and they've gone on to do amazing things. Like Josh won World Player of the Year. It's just insane. But Josh was definitely more professional than me. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying for a second that I should be there if I'd done everything right. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But I just say, when I look back, there's a guy who definitely, fulfilled his potential. But I probably, allowed myself to get a little bit distracted by a few other things, and it just didn't really play out exactly the way I wanted it to. But still very proud that it all happened. Very long-winded answer. Sorry.
No, that's perfect. It's really interesting. I think, I've not spoken to any rugby players who have retired and kind of looked back and gone, I achieved my potential.
Yeah.
I think everyone kind of, if you had told me at 18 that I'd have played in the Premiership, I wouldn't have believed you. I didn't think I had it in me at all. But when I retired, I was like, you probably could have done more there.
Yeah.
But I would have bitten your hand off for that 18.
Yeah, and it's. I think it's because the reason you get there in the first place is because you set lofty goals for yourself and you hold yourself to high standards and you're disciplined, you're a hard worker. And when you have that in you, you just always think you can do more. But I think it is important just for your own sanity to sometimes go, I'm actually not doing too badly here. Yeah.
100%. I think rattled off some names who were below you. The names who were ahead of you would have been pretty big as well.
Yeah, so like when I went in, You're talking about such an elite group of players, and it was really cool to be a part of it. Like, I was only telling Megan, my wife, the other day about the song came on the radio. It was like a really old R&B kind of hip hop song. I was like, always remember the song. The first day I was going into the Leinster Academy, I was in this house share in Dublin, and I was the only guy in the house at the time. And this song came on, and I was just so nervous about going into to meet everyone my first day. It was like a new job, because these are all my idols growing up. You know, they're literally like Brian O'Driscoll, Shane Horgan. Like, I'm going into work with these guys. Like, you're walking around like shaking hands. I'm like, hi, I'm Brian. I'm like, no shit, I fucking love you. So you just got to reflect on all that stuff and be like, that was amazing. And even like Sean O'Brien, again, would have been, you know, like a hero of mine growing up. And then he was like my mentor in the academy. And he was great. You know, I probably left Leinster in kind of bad terms. Definitely not bad terms. Just, you know, I didn't leave of my own accord. It was because there wasn't a place for me. So like that was a bit disappointing. But then I went to London Irish, and then he came across. And I was helping him settle in Irish, and we became great friends and still are great friends. So although, you know, it was an amazing journey, but and I learned a lot from it, but it all comes to an end eventually.
Yeah. And obviously you came over to London Irish, and that was where you had this sort of good fortune to meet me as well, and live with me that first year.
Yeah.
How did you find that move from Leinster? You've now had to sort of rethink things. You're now at London Irish. What was that like coming at that time?
So when I left Leinster, I had a couple of injuries, and they basically said, look, you haven't proven to us that you're like durable, that you're able to continually play games, and you need to basically go away and prove yourself, and we'd love to have you back, was the message. No, let's go back a step, because it's quite an important kind of moment. So when I was like in my third year of the academy, you know, all the feedback was that, you know, you were on track for a senior contract, and things were looking good, even though it was like the senior squad was pretty stacked in terms of back rowers. And then it was like in November time, and Joe Schmidt was the Irish coach at the time, but he had been the Leinster coach for the 2 years previous. And I had a pretty good relationship with Joe. And he rang me and he said, look, Gilly, there's a back row crisis in Connacht. You're not getting any game time. You're 21 now. I think you should go down there. I know Pat, he's a fantastic coach. He's a back rower, Pat Lamb. You should do it. And I was like, okay. So I rang, you know, my agent at the time, and I was like, this is on the table. He's like, just leave it with me. I'll figure out all what's going on kind of contractually and yada, yada, yada. So then it was like, the agreement was I would go down to Connacht on a first team contract. I would be playing Heineken Cup the following week. It was like a 7-month loan deal. It was the first ever loan deal in Ireland, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It's very commonplace now, but it was the first one in Ireland at the time. So I'd go down to Connacht for 7 months, and Leinster were like, we're only letting you go if you sign a senior team contract with us next year. So I was like, this is my break. This is, you know, it's all starting to happen now. I was going to have to sort out my college and put that on pause, but it was like, okay, right, I'm getting my big break now. And then that was leading into the weekend, and I was chatting to my mum about it, my housemate, and we're getting all that organised. And then that weekend, I think Shane Jennings and Geordie Murphy, who I forgot to mention earlier, they both got injured. They both got like medium-term injuries. One of them broke their hand, one of them hurt their ankle. And I came in on Monday morning, and Matt O'Connor was like, you're not going, mate. He's the head coach at the time. He's like, we're short-staffed in your position. You're going to get a break. And I was 21 at the time. I wasn't strong-willed enough to just say, this is my career. Let me go.
Yeah.
Like, you're not letting me go because it's in your best interest. You're not looking after my best interest here. And I rolled over and I held the bag for another 3 months. My agent was like, hold tight, see if you can get a couple of games and we'll push for a, you know, more lucrative contract or whatever. And then I got injured. And then the contract got taken off the table, and I ended up going down to Connacht like 4 months later anyways, because I had no deal at Leinster, and played a few games there, and then went over to London Irish. Basically, long story short, and you only learn these things through experience, right, is that like everyone's self-interested, right? And you got to look after yourself all the time. And I was always very I would say, I hope you would say the same. I was always very selfless with the way I approached team sports, and it's the right way. You need to have those people in the changing room, but ultimately you got to look after yourself, number one. And I shouldn't have let Matt block that deal.
You were 21, right?
Yeah.
So, to be fair,
it's very difficult.
He was a big head coach. You're 21 to say, actually, no, I need to go. Would he could just stopped it anyway? Like, what?
I probably could have, but at the same time, if you're very strong-willed about it, I don't want to be here, or this is really important. I just kind of said, took it at face value. I might get kept at Leinster, but instead of really thinking this is the right thing for me to do at the time. Hindsight's a great fella, right? You know what I mean? But to answer your first question, coming over to London, it was brilliant. Like I loved my 6 years London Irish. Was it amazing for my rugby career? I'm not so sure. I loved the club. I had a great time. It was very good to me. I made some great friends, made some great contacts, got a great life experience out of it. But I think had I stayed in Ireland, you're a homegrown player. They want Irish players coming through the system. It's not as attritional, the league. I had suffered a lot of kind of injuries from just the brute force of the Premiership. Like my shoulders are knackered now and didn't really hold up too well with the physicality. Yeah, whether it was the right thing, from a career perspective, I'm not 100% sure. I would say, though, I thought I had it all figured out. Like I was 21, I was quite a confident young guy. Thought I had life sussed and I could I had it all figured out. And then when I moved to London, I was so out of my comfort zone.
Oh, really?
And that's, it's really healthy, but walking in those big characters in the changing room, like Jeb Sinclair's and so all of that was a big learning curve, but I definitely am a better person as a result of it. I'm more mature.
I think we'll come back to the rugby side a bit as well, but you had a slightly interesting retirement sort of process compared to, because you mentioned the whole identity crisis that people go through where you've now lost a bit of that purpose. You got that a bit later than you expected.
Yeah. If you take a step back again, 15, all I want to do is play rugby. Like that's all I want to do. I always want to play rugby. And then you, in a sense, achieve it. You get to play the professional game. You don't get to the heights that you initially set out to, but it's still pretty good going, right? And it's pretty well documented. Like transition is really hard because you attach so much of your identity to this sport, right? And you think that so much of your DNA and your identity is like intertwined in this sport. And you just can't fathom what life could be like without that, like you're this rugby player and that's it. And also just like, the financial stress of like having to find something else to make money. And I had to stop playing because I got a pretty serious concussion and was recommended to stop playing by a doctor. And then it was also around COVID, so it was quite a weird time to finish. I never really got to say goodbye to all the squad properly. And
was that when you retired?
Yeah, it was that year. It was during COVID. But I left and I went traveling with Meg for like 6 or 8 weeks, and that was amazing. We rented a camper van and drove around South France. It was an amazing time.
You felt, this is all right.
This is all right. And then I went
I
went on holidays in August, and I was like, this is so much better than pre-season. yeah. I could really get used to this. And then I started in a really, really early stage tech company. I was the first salesperson in the door. Hardcore sales, like here's a laptop, here's a phone, like just try and book meetings. I'd done that for a year, and then an opportunity came up to go on The Apprentice. So this is the BBC show with Lord Sugar, a show that I'd always been really interested in and thought I could have been good at, because normally had like an ex-sports person on the show and an Irish person. Went through the audition process, told them, they were like, why should we pick you? When I was like getting down to the final stages, and I said, you always have one washed up sports person and one Irish person on the show. You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone with me. Yeah. They loved that. So I went and I did that. You speak to a lot of like mature business people and be like, I just don't understand why you'd want to do that. Like, it's just, you're just exposing yourself. It's like a comedy skit or whatever. But when you're starting out your career, there's a lot less to lose. Like your new career. Like I hadn't figured out what I wanted to do. It was an opportunity to go on, on national TV. Who knows what opportunities could come off the back of that. And if you win, then, great exposure. You get to partner up with like a tycoon. But then admitted, like, I would say, like, there's a bit of, you like the idea of like the publicity that comes from it, right? Like there's probably something missing from when you stop playing rugby. So you're saying maybe this is the going to plug that gap for me. So I quit my job. That job I was working with, my boss was like quite surprised. I was doing reasonably well for him at the time. Went and bought like 5 new suits. Was like, this is going to be the next big thing. Like this is going to be my career, my TV career, my business career, working with Lord Sugar. And then the whole process, it's like it's quite a long drawn out process to get in there. There's like 60,000 applicants.
Really?
Yeah, and it's a savage audition process, and it takes months, like the whole thing. And then when you get to it, like there's so much due diligence they have to do on you, like and then you're like a week. Because of COVID, we were like a week in isolation beforehand, and you basically get to this point where you're like, this is the be all and end all. Like you have to go and do well now, and everyone's watching, and this is so important. So I built it up so much in my head, and then it was a fucking disaster. Like I got knocked out in the second round, and it felt like it was so humiliating. And it's quite weird, the whole setup. You sign like pretty heavy-handed NDAs because you record the show in the summer, and then it doesn't air for like 6 months. And you're not allowed to talk about it with anybody.
Really?
And this thing has been built up to being so important in your head, and it was a disaster. And it's actually, in a way, it's kind of traumatic. It is quite traumatic. Like a lot of people come off shows like The Apprentice, and I've obviously not been on Love Island, but people come off it and they're like, it's such an artificial world that like you come out and you just kind of struggle to like get back into normality afterwards, even though I was only in there for like flipping 6 days or something like that. But it was quite traumatic. And I remember speaking to, they have like what do you call them? Like a psych or that. It's like there for you if you're kind of like struggling afterwards. And I remember saying to her, like, I'm really low, like
really, like
unusually low. Well, I never was low, you know me quite well. Quite a happy-go-lucky guy. I was like, I can't shake this. This is like, so I probably got knocked out of that at the end of June. This is like end of August. And I'm struggling to get myself out of bed. I'm not back working. I actually went back to Mullingar to be with my parents. I wasn't even in London. And I was like, fuck, this is really hard. But she made a good point to me. She's like, I'm not 100% sure this is all to do with the show. I think this is a delayed reaction to a bit of an identity crisis you're having from stopping rugby. And she was so right. Yeah. Like, I think that was the catalyst that went, I haven't, got comfortable with myself or figured things out post rugby yet. So I need to do that. So it took us like kind of 12 months after I finished playing, 18 months after I played my last game, and it just all kind of came, say, crashing down. Like, it's a bit dramatic. Like, I was fine, but I was not myself. And then eventually kind of managed to like dust myself down and be like, right, I just need to go and throw myself into another career. Just like, people keep telling me I could be good at sales. I've got a lot of people a lot of friends and peers my age who are working for tech companies, and I know they're making a good living. There's low barriers to entry, i.e. I don't need to study for 6 years or like, climb this like corporate ladder. You just go in, be good with people, learn how to negotiate, understand your product, and you can have a quite rapid rise to good earnings. So I was like, right, this is the niche for me. I had done that with Detected, but I got some good career advice from somebody to say, rather than working in like a really early stage startup at the beginning of your career, like go into like a big blue chip or like a big corporate where they know what good looks like. You'll be trained properly, and that will be the grounding or the training you can take with you for your whole life. And that made a lot of sense to me, because when I remember when I was playing rugby with Leinster, and I was in the academy, and I was just surrounded by all these amazing professionals, and it was such a good culture, and the training was like world class.
Yeah.
Everything I learned at Leinster, I would try and like replicate that all the time and bring that into what I was doing at London Irish. And we had a good setup at London Irish, but it wasn't as good as Leinster. No. I was like, right, that's really good. Rather than spinning wheels and thinking you're doing things right with these early stage startups, let's get in with a big company, latch on to some really good salespeople in there and learn what good looks like. And I've done that with FIS, and it's been great. And, I'm over the whole rugby thing now, and I feel like I've found my niche in business, and I'm very confident, and I believe I'm quite competent now. So, it's nice to be out the other side of it.
Yeah. And you feel like you're fully through that now. How long did it take?
Well, so like that period of like being in a slump the summer after I retired probably was like went on for a couple of months, 2-3 months. Yeah, it was a weird time. I was wrestling with a lot of kind of rejection from the show because I wanted it so badly.
And did you think, was there a feeling that was the thing? That was what was going to make everything make sense again from stopping?
And it was so stupid because looking back now, it was never ever going to.
Again, hindsight, man. You look back, but at the time, you probably thought, this is me now. Did they also make you kind of exaggerate yourself at all, or does that happen?
Oh, it's a crazy show. I know there won't be too many like real life examples of things that goes on in that show that you could like adopt or like into real life. So, but it's one of the hardest things I've ever done, without a doubt. Like they are masters at manufacturing incredibly stressful, difficult situations surrounded by a lot of difficult individuals, and it's ruthless. Like, you know what I mean? So like you are sleep deprived.
Oh, really?
So they don't let you sleep a whole lot.
Well, that's deliberate, is it? Do you think?
Well, you just have to do so much in a day. Like, you're effectively building a business from the ground up in 48 hours. And then that's the task is 2 days long typically, and then you're in the boardroom, and then you've got a day off, and then you go again. But like, there would have been, I was only done 2 tasks, but on both of those tasks, I was probably getting to bed, on day one of the task, or maybe day one of the task, I was probably getting to bed at around 1-2 o'clock, and you're up again at 4:30. For long days, you've 15 minutes to get ready. And the challenges are like, it's not exactly as you see it in the show. Like, there are a lot of like restrictions and guardrails on you that make it a lot more difficult than
it appears when you watch.
And when I'm watching it like before I went on, I was like, these guys are so stupid. Like, I'd be so much better at that. But then you get there and you're like, fuck, this is hard. And it's just, it was actually a really good experience. The thing I loved about it was I was in, it's like a state of flow in there. Like, I was so focused because you've no phones. They take away the paper and pen in your room, no access to TV. You are there to focus on one thing.
So you just chat with the others, or you're just on your own?
So when you're doing the task, like, everything needs to make sense to the viewer. So if you're not on camera, they can't have you having all these side conversations, because then if you have like a side conversation with someone that's not on camera, the edit's going to be all wrong. They'll be like, where the hell did this come from? So like, if you're not on camera, you're just over sitting in a corner in silence.
Yeah, okay, of course.
And you can't like rationalize. So like, me and you could make a decision on something, and okay, Ross, let's come up with a name for your podcast.
Yeah.
You've got 5 minutes to pick it. And then we do that, and then we break up, and then we go our separate ways for the day and go into a new task. And then we're in the new task, and you're like, that name is actually not suiting
where we're at now. Yeah.
What the theme of this podcast is, but it's done in a way that we've submitted our answers. We can't go back
but
on
they say, no, that's it now.
That's it. Like, that's it. And I get it, because they have to be like methodical and regimented in how they run these things, because they've got, and as the day goes on, and then they're like licking their lips going, oh, this is going to make for me. So office in the boardroom.
This guy is
but what I loved about it was I was so focused, I didn't drink. I didn't have a drink for 6 weeks going into it. I trained hard. I built my business plan. I watched all the episodes going into it. I was ready, you know what I mean? And I was so focused on winning this thing. And then we get in there and everyone's so focused. And it's quite cool. Like, you're you're going around, like, I don't know the actual numbers, but there's probably like 40, maybe 30 or 40 Vianos going around in convoy for these tasks. Like, it's a huge operation. There's
Really?
like 16 candidates, but there's like probably 50 the production team
Yeah.
with this, and you're going around and like so focused, it's so organized, it's like you're high on adrenaline all the time. And I was like, it actually did fill a void for me from what I was missing from the rugby. I was like, because that's what's so special about a rugby team, is that like everyone wants to be there.
Yeah.
Everyone is so competitive and on your level, and you're all striving for the same thing.
Yeah.
Striving to win, to have a contract, to be the best professional you possibly can be. It did fill a void that way. And I was only saying this to my wife, and we watched some like Secret Services TV series. And at the end of it, I was like, I'd actually love to do something like that.
With the SAS?
Be in the army or Secret Services, because it's just like the adrenaline.
Yeah.
And everyone's so focused.
Like SAS Who Dares Wins. That one looks brutal.
Yeah, but I'm not sorry, not so much the TV series. Actually go in and be
actually be one. Yeah.
Be one.
We could do SAS reserves. I've seen something the other day. It was like they're always looking for reserves, and it's not that hard to like. You have to give up a few weekends.
I'd say my wife and my mum would absolutely hate if I joined the army.
Well,
how much unrest there is in the world.
So in my headspace, okay, I need it.
But I need to figure out. I haven't got it yet. I need to figure out that thing. Like, I'm in doing sales now, and I like it. I'm good at it. I'm making more money than I ever did playing rugby. I see good career progression in it, but it is not stoking my fire.
Yeah,
I probably want.
Well, that was a question I had, because obviously rugby is so clear, right? When you're playing rugby, the goal is to play really well, to get your contract, to make the team. It's so clear. Then when you stop, that goal is kind of, oh, I'm after now. And if do you think you haven't quite found that just yet? Sales is doing a bit, but
the one thing I would say about sales is that there actually are a lot of similarities to rugby, right? Like, let's say you look at a rugby season, you go, right, we take a few weeks off in the summer, come back in 1st of July or whatever, you get an 8-week training program, pre-season, you know what your games are. The goal is in the 8 weeks, is to be as strong and as fit as you can possibly be, make good impression with the coaches, get into the team, win as many games as possible, try and win some silverware or whatever is a realistic outcome based on the team that you have, and then get a contract at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
And that cycle just keeps repeating itself. And then if you're really good, then you might get called up for your country or whatever. And that suits me. Like, that routine and that structure suits me, because I went to a boarding school, and I actually really, when I reflect on like when I'm at my best, what do? I have a really strong routine. I have a really rigid routine. I think that applies for most people, right? But sales is not unlike that. Like, 1st of January comes, new target. Here's your account. These are the guardrails or the rules you got to play within. This is how much money you can make. Go sell. Go figure it out. Like, build a pipeline. Get speaking to clients. Understand your product, and just hit the market.
Yeah.
And then let's see what comes out in the wash at the end of the year. You know. So like there is a lot of similarities to sport. But the adrenaline is, you know, the sense of fulfillment and adrenaline isn't just quite as good. But I don't know if that'll ever come back. Realistically, like, you know, I get my hits from training, and that's where I get them from now. But it would be cool to be in something where I'm just like so dialed in, like that sense of flow. Like, I had it multiple times playing, where like you just watching everything you eat, your trainings, you're on the money, sleeping well. Had it leading into the Apprentice. Like, I remember there was a time leading into the 20s World Cup, sat down with my coaches, you know, back in Leinster, and they were like, right, this is whatever, 1st of April, Junior World Cup kicks off in 1st of June, let's say. You've got 8 weeks, right? You had a brilliant campaign, you're fit, you're healthy. Let's just leave no stone left unturned for this. This is the world stage you get to play on, and you've got a team that could win it. And I just like cleared the decks, no socializing, going out, tidied up my diet, trained so hard, and I was so ready for that tournament. And it was such a nice feeling, you know. It was just like, I'm so ready. I'm at my best. And we went down there. It sounds like a sob story, but we beat England, or we beat South Africa in the first game in South Africa, and they were the favourites. And then we played England in the second game, and we were like 14-0 up. The pitch was a disgrace. It was a mud bath. And then some fella fell on my ankle, and I like fractured my ankle. Basically, came off, wasn't able to play for the rest of the tournament. South Africa ended up qualifying in first place on points difference, and they went on to win it.
Oh, really?
And it's just like, but it was very fulfilling in the lead up to that. Just going like, I'm going to play at the world stage, and I'm physically at my best here. Like I
completely dialed in.
Yeah. That feeling of just being dialed in and at your best is class.
Yeah, I've probably had that once myself. Like one time where I was so clear about what leads to me doing well, and I nailed it. And I don't know why I didn't do it more, considering I know it happened for me once. I don't know. Looking back, why didn't I do that whole career? Probably about a different career.
That's when I'm at my best, when I have like really clear structure, and I make a lot of sacrifices. It's just something that's like ingrained in me, that like I feel good and I feel like I'm at my best when I sacrifice things. Which is hard in this world.
Oh, it is. I think when you hear about people doing it, it's quite inspiring as well. I think there was a story I heard about Giannis Antetokounmpo, the basketball player. He's unbelievable basketball player. They've been knocked out of the playoffs like 3 years in a row, and this time he'd been getting some negativity or something like that, and he just stopped talking to everyone for like 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. All he would do was train and play, and he just destroyed it. And then finals, like, and you hear it and you're like, I could do that with something. I'm going to run a 5K or something. But it's honestly, you hear it and you're like, that's fucking cool.
It is that, but that is because, and I used to always be looking for those things when I was playing, like something to like create like a chip on my shoulder, or to just be dialed in on.
But I do want to go on to that because while you say that off the pitch you could have been more disciplined, you were definitely known on the pitch as someone who would focus very much on the controllables, which would be your work rate, your communication, the things that everyone could do. You would, that was what you were best at, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was definitely not the most skillful or talented guy in the world, but I always prided myself on the basics.
Yeah, and I assume you had quite a few coaches over your time. Who do you think got the most out of you?
Good question. So I'm obsessed with leadership. So I've done 2 degrees, came out of school, done a business degree in Dublin, but then done a leadership management degree in Northumbria, and I'd done you do like a thesis or whatever on leadership around team sports. And I think leadership is like the most critical component to success in sport and in business, right? Like good leaders are the difference between winning and losing. And I look back at like my career at rugby, there's a couple of people that stand out for different reasons. And I've heard you talk about this before, but there was one regime which was like led by Brendan Venter and Nick Kennedy. And we were like successful in the championship, which we should have been because we had, the way more resources than everyone else. And then we struggled in the Premiership. But I loved that culture. And it was very, I loved how simple it was. It was like, they were very clear on expectations of the players. They would say, they would break things up into like, what was it, like work ethic or work effort and skill effort. And they were like, we will never question you or come down on you if you work hard. And if you cover more ground than your opposite player on the pitch, if you're off, their time off the ground, if you just work your nuts off and all your stuff, right? So that no time, didn't have any time for like people coming in not knowing their lineouts, not knowing their plays, because you should be at home learning these things. And I just loved how clear it was what the expectation was on me as a player, and I felt like I thrived in that environment. So that was one. Another coach that really stood out to me was not that he coached me directly, but I was around the senior environment quite a lot when I was in the academy. Was the Joe Schmidt, who was at Leinster, and he was like a very special coach as well. Ireland were was responsible for creating like a golden era of Irish rugby. But he would talk about, he had like 3 words on the wall. It was like harder, smarter, earlier, right? And that's how he would like assess his players. Like when he would like review games, he was like, could you have hit that ruck or that tackle harder? Simple question, yes or no. If the answer was no, you probably should next time. Earlier, like, could you have been in position earlier? And, you have more time on the ball then. It's easier to make reads, and you're helping your team out for getting in the position earlier because they can make the right decisions. Like, it's a really easy way to, review a game for yourself. You don't even need them there with you. And then the other one was smarter. Like, could I have made a smarter decision there? So if you're like reviewing a game or a training session, you're just constantly asking yourself those 3 questions. You don't even need them there with you.
Yeah.
You know the answer. And I was like, this guy's awesome. Now, don't get me wrong, there was way more depth to his coaching than that. But that one really stuck with me. And I loved with Venter, it was like he was just so clear on your expectations. So, and I try and take that into my work and business, is that like there's a lot of flipping noise out there and people completely overcomplicate things. But when I observe like really good leaders in an organization like FIS, 50,000 employees, and we're selling into a lot of enterprise organizations. If I get FaceTime with like C-level execs, they don't overcomplicate things. They like simple.
Yeah.
They want simple answers. They don't like things to be, for salespeople to overcomplicate or try and dazzle them. They just want real talk. And when you're on, like a big part of our job is like explaining how the technology will improve this organization's life. Like, you just explain it simply to them. And then the other thing in terms of leadership is, in any career, you need people in power or leaders to believe in you and back you.
Yeah.
And if you don't get them, you need to find somewhere else to make a living or that, because they'll just hold you back. And so like I look back my career in school, there was a guy called Noel McNamara, who's now the attack coach for Bordeaux, was the attack coach for the Sharks last year. He's on a really steep trajectory of in the rugby coaching world. But he just believed in me. I believed in me more than I believed in myself at the time, 100%. And, you need guys like that in your corner.
Yeah.
When I went into the academy, I had a guy called Collie McEntee, believed in me. When I might look at my time at London Irish, that regime we spoke about, Brendan Venter, Nick Kennedy, those guys, George Skimming, I think they believed in me. And I was playing well under that regime. Glenn Delaney, another guy, Brian Smith, when I first went in, I had a really good first year at Irish because the guys believed in me.
Yeah.
But then I look at the other times where like I wasn't playing, I was probably in a bit of a negative mindset, a bit of a victim mindset. The guys didn't like me. Or like not that they didn't like me, but I don't think they believed in my ability the way.
And you can tell.
You can tell.
No one's ever told you I don't believe in you, right?
No.
The way they
it's
speak
the way, It's the way.
You kind of go. I remember I used to do some drills sometimes, and everyone would have a go at it. It'd be like a high ball. They'd be like, right, try and get your foot up, or try and do this, try and do that. I'd do it, and they'd be like, all right, next. I was like,
yeah, you're not even giving me feedback.
And then I'd be like, what did you think? They'd be like, yeah, no, good stuff, mate. And I'm like,
so true. You can just.
I was like, oh, you don't need to say it. You hate me, don't you?
You just see it, and like, but you need people that believe in you.
There's an interesting effect with it. Have you heard of the Pygmalion effect?
No.
So the Pygmalion effect, it's one of my favorite ones. So they did this study on these kids, and this guy came in from Harvard to do an experiment, and he basically created this early predictor of people's talent. And it was kind of irrelevant as to how well they were doing at that time. It's like, if they take this test, we'll figure out what their potential is. And so they also then tested all their basic skills on top of that to kind of see where they were at that point. And they said by the end of the year, based on our assessment, these students will do really well on the normal tests. And then they came back at the end of the year. And as predicted, these students, that some were doing bad at the start of the year or middle or great, these kids were killing it by the end of the year. And then they came back and said, you just so you know, there was no test. We picked this number at random. Because the way the teachers then interacted with this person has potential, they interact with them a certain way and they start believing they're good. And it's called the Pygmalion effect.
Yeah, I've heard that. And it is like managers in work and code in sports, they have such profound impact on your trajectory. Like, you always get those stars that are just going to succeed no matter what, but they have such a profound impact. Sorry, there was one actually kind of message I did think about this before I came here on those coaches that clear instructions leads to high performance, expectation, yada yada yada. Like, for me in business now, working for a big company like FIS, clarity leads to good results as well on what's expected. Like, I know we used to own a company called WorldPay, a big payment provider, and on their screensaver I just seen that their values were think like a client, act like an owner, win as one team. And I know we do these things, at the start of every season, set our values, what are these, and they're pretty hit and miss as to like whether the group live and die by them and if they like carry any value by the end of the season. But I really like that line. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Ultimately, the goal is to have as many clients as possible and to make them as happy as possible and to have them spending as much money as possible. Therefore, you have to think in their best interest. What do they want or what do they need? And then secondly, am I protecting the best interest of the company because I'm the owner? And if you do those two things, and if when you're making these decisions on what's right and wrong, like rather than just constantly looking for approvals from your manager and slowing things down, it's like, if I make decisions with those two things in mind, I can't go too far wrong.
Yeah.
And I can move at speed. Then I can move at speed. And then when things do go well, like, we need to celebrate it because it's we're doing it together. I really like that. So like, I'm such a big believer in like clear communication, clear expectation on what you want from me, and clear goals.
Yeah.
And then that will drive the best performance that you can possibly have.
It is interesting. And the clarity thing you talk about, clarity comes up all the time, right? And it seems like it should be quite simple, right? Give clarity. How hard is that? But so few people manage to nail it. So you think, well, why? I've got my theories on it, but I think when people are under pressure, they try and control as much as they can. And if they haven't told you everything, then if it goes wrong, well, they didn't tell you enough. But even if they told you, and that's now on you because I told you it, you look at coaches who put together game plans. The more detailed it is, the more you're having to then take into the game because they try to prepare you. The best team I was at, I was lucky to be at Saracen for 2 months. Their meeting was like half an hour.
Yeah, exactly. It's simple.
One message, and then they told you the rest. They went, end of the day, what's going to make you play well? But that takes balls to go, I'm going to give them less than I think they can take because that might perform better.
Yeah.
And if we lose and they go, what, you only had one message on the screen? Yeah. Give them more. Like, that's the ability to absorb pressure.
That is such a good analysis of like clarity. Yeah. And it's an environment I would love to have got a look into. Like, well, I probably got a flavor of it through Brendan Venter, I was very lucky to get that because he
was good on me.
He was brilliant. But you're so right. It's like when you just overload people with information, they can't process it. It's, in a sales pitch, like if you just nonstop talking, you don't pause and give them a second to digest it, they come out of it more confused than they went in. And you're giving clear messages to people on the pitch. If they have too many things to think about, they're not going to be able to make, concise, sharp decisions because there are too many things going on in their head. And even like at the minute, my to-do list is flipping longer than my right arm. And I sit down at the desk and I feel overwhelmed and I have to go for a walk and be like, I'm just going to go back to my desk and do one thing.
Yeah. Get some momentum.
And get some momentum. Yeah. I think it's like a life hack is like not overwhelming yourself or the people around you or the people you're trying to influence with information. It's just clear messages.
It's getting that clarity wash or whatever you do. But interesting with Brendan, I thought what he was really good at was creating the right mood. So remember when he used to give talks and most people give a half an hour talk and you switch off unless someone said, and he would be constantly saying people's names.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be talking to you. Yeah. He'd just be like, and so the point here, Ross, is that, and you're like,
yeah.
Okay, I'm listening now.
Yeah.
Sales teams now, right? I work with a few cold calling teams on culture and stuff like this. And they have all the targets and they have the whiteboards and this. But you say to them, like, in order to make the right decisions, you want to be in the right mood. So their decision-making changes. You want your dad to give you 20 quid after school. You want him in a good mood, not a bad mood.
Yeah.
So his decision-making is affected by his mood. So you go to a sales team. what mood leads to the best outcome here? And they can tell me really quickly, well, we need people happy, we need people confident, we need them clear. So, okay, show me in your day what you have that's deliberately designed to create that mood. They're like, well, nothing. I was like, then was it going to come like that? How are you going to create that?
Yeah. I don't want to do it right now, but I would love to go into management.
Yeah.
But you make such a good point. It's like, in order to, particularly sales is so mindset driven. How are you going to influence people to buy your product or to take an interest in you if you're not feeling good about yourself? It's like, I'm married now, but like, if you're going out, if you're dating, like, and you're trying to put yourself in the shop window for a lady that you're going to meet, like, you're not going to show up in a bad mood and share all your problems and be like, oh shit, right. you know what I mean? It's the same with sales, but life is a sale. Like, even if you're in senior management, like, you're selling the vision of the company and the values and the end goal all the time internally. But if you're a salesperson, you're out there trying to influence clients to buy more product from you or to pick you over some of the competition. If you're a manager, you're trying to motivate, you're selling.
Yeah.
You're always selling, like, you're always in that mood. And you're right. And it boils down to the best managers, the best leaders, the best salespeople. They all have a good mindset.
Yeah.
They're good to be around. They make you feel good. They know when to push the right buttons, when to pull the right levers. Like, if the team is down and out, like Brendan was good at this, and in fairness, like, if he got the impression that the team were like low, like, he wouldn't send us out on the pitch to beat each other up. He'd like, right, I need to lift the mood here. Like, I need to think outside the box.
Yeah.
Maybe we just go to the pub and have a few pints, go to a coffee shop and just chat and like not talk about rugby.
Yeah.
And then we'll come in and maybe we'll be in a better mood on Thursday and we can attack it then.
It is mental. I think I actually spoke to one of the Saracens boys a while ago, and do you remember they had a period where they lost 3 games in a row and they got pumped by 50 points to Bordeaux at home?
Yeah.
It was a period. I said to one of the guys, oh, that must be a tough one. I said, what happened? They said they came in one day and on the schedule, it was a gym session and then a 2-hour meeting. And he was like, okay, well, we know what's happening there. And that was their plan, to do a big review. And apparently did the gym session, came up for the meeting. One of the coaches looked around and went, all right, everyone go home. Sent everyone home. Sorry, after a 55-point loss. And they came in the next day and everything, and I think Owen Farrell was driving as well, it was all about catching a feeling. It was all about, how do we get that feeling? How do we train super well today? And the belief there is, well, this is just what I've taken from this, is there's not a problem with skill. You know these players are good. So actually going into everything you've done wrong just makes you think more about the wrong stuff, and you're connecting that, and the mood then becomes worse if it's a one-off. Now, they thought, change the mood, the decision-making, that skill is still there. So while you don't always want to ignore things if things are continually bad, they thought change the mood, and then they won the next game. They won the next 7 games. And you're like, but that takes balls again.
Yeah, it's the courage to make those decisions, back to the point you made around putting one word up on the board rather than this complex plan.
It's odd.
But apparently I never had the pleasure of working with Andy Farrell, but a few of my friends are in the Irish camp and they just speak so highly of him, and he seems to have that knack of like really understanding the mood and the changing room and knowing what the right thing is for the team. Like, do I go out here and do we train really hard, or do they need time with their families? And he thinks about it a lot more holistically. And even like when they went over to the World Cup, you know, he probably had to fight tooth and nail for this, but like they were flying all the families out every weekend for the games, and they were getting a day off after the games, because he knew that was the best way to recharge the players so they could go again the following week. Now, unfortunately, it didn't work out for Ireland. We can't really seem to get past the quarterfinal. But I understand that the mood in the camp was really good, and they all came away with their heads held high and said, I'm not sure if we could have done anything different. We just got beaten by a really good New Zealand team. And I'd having that, like, I'm my first year at FS, I wouldn't have done this, but like sometimes, like, I sit down at my desk, I'm like, I'm not in the right headspace to go out speaking to clients now.
Yeah.
Like, it's actually counterproductive for me and for them. So maybe I'm just going to go to the gym or go for a walk, come back and do it. Like, having that understanding and self-awareness of like, am I in the right headspace? And don't get me wrong, like I'm not a complete prima donna. Like sometimes you just got to get the work done, and you got to do hard things. But I think like being the master of your mind and your mindset it's a life hack. It is like just doing things because people tell you to do things is the wrong way to do it.
Being able to take on the pressure yourself and keep it off the team is like it is a really interesting area. That's why I think a lot of those culture things, you do it at staff every year.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at culture, it takes maybe 2 or 3 years before it's really embedded. And I spoke to some of the guys who were at Saracens when they started. And he said when they first did all their sort of like talking to people in the morning and shaking hands, they all took the piss out of it. It was like this, you had to do it, but they were all kind of like, oh, this is a bit long. He said over time, it just became automatic. So maybe when people do it, they just expect it to work too quickly and then give up on it. Yeah. But actually, it might take 2 years of it piss taking.
Got to be persistent with it. Absolutely. Yeah, we used to do that in Leinster. I would say as well with culture, it's very intangible, isn't it? But you can feel it when it's right in a change room. But I think in order for it to gather any momentum, there needs to be like some sort of proof points that it's working. I remember listening to Freddie Flintoff on a podcast about culture, and he was like, culture's a lot of bollocks. He's like, culture comes from teams winning.
Yeah.
And there's an element to that that's true, because if you're doing all the right things and you're winning and you continue to do the right things, whereas if you're doing the right things and you're not getting the proof points, then you're like, oh, we're doing something wrong, and everyone's jumping around changing. It was a problem with London Irish. It was like
4 coaches in 3 years, I remember.
Changing direction every...
This is the point, though.
3 or 4 months. You got to stick with it.
So I disagree. Yeah, I disagree with him there. Just because it's like the chicken and the egg. It's much easier to have good culture when you're winning.
Yeah.
But it's much easier to win when you have good culture.
Yeah.
So I study these organizations all the time. Most of them start with a shit culture, and they have someone at the top who's willing to see long term and deal with the shit in the present. Yeah. And eventually they get this culture and they kind of forget where they were and what they had to do.
Yeah.
So
you are right, and you made a good point. It's that ability to have someone steering the ship that's thinking long term. It's so important.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. What was it Einstein said? Is make things as simple as you can, but no simpler.
Yeah,
which is helpful and unhelpful. So
it goes back. It goes back to the clarity thing.
Yeah,
overcomplicate things. I sometimes when I'm going into meetings, like when I was starting off at FIS, I would spend hours practicing what I was going to say, because I didn't know what I was saying in great detail. Like I didn't understand it. So I just practice, and it came from rugby. But now I understand what I'm talking about. I just always go in with 3 clear messages. Like, 3 clear messages. What do we want to get out of this? What's the objective of this call? What are my 3 things? And then if the call finishes a half an hour or 20 minutes early, just finish. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you don't need
to,
just to carry on.
Get what we need out of this meeting and move on to the next thing.
Yeah, for sure. It is, and honestly, I think we probably talk about the leadership and culture areas all day. But just to finish, most useful book you've ever read?
So moving into the world of business and tech, there's 2 books I would recommend. One of them is called Hard Things About Hard Things. I can't remember the first name of the guy with Horowitz. He owns a big VC company now. And then the other one I read recently, if anyone is into software sales, it's called The Qualified Sales Leader by John McMahon. He's the ex-CRO of a company called MongoDB. But they're just the first book is an incredible story of just how hard it is to scale a tech company to an IPO, and all of the really shitty decisions you have to make along the way. And it was actually, I was part of that company Detected at the time. And when I read it, it gave me a really good perspective of what it was like to be the founder and the co-founder of that company. Yeah. And I could understand how hard it was for them, like when they're making decisions, even though it was really early stage. And it gives you a really good perspective of what it's like for a senior leader or a manager, even in rugby as well. The other one, the qualified sales leader, is an incredible simplification of what enterprise sales is.
Yeah.
He's like breaks it down into understand your product, build pipeline, address the market. But when you speak to someone in the company, do they have a pain that they need to solve? Can your product solve the pain? Build an internal ambassador and then help them sell it internally, basically. Yeah. And I was reading it and I was like, oh my God, I've been doing this job for 3 years now. And he was just making it all make sense. Yeah. He was putting all the pieces of the puzzle in an organized fashion in front of me.
Yeah.
And I think that they're just two really good books.
Yeah, perfect. But one thing I did want to ask you was, if you were a young rugby player starting off at 18, what would you say to them if they wanted to make the most of their career?
Don't do it. Terrible career choice.
There you are.
Don't do it.
I mean, there's worse advice.
I am broken. I'm 32. I didn't even play that much rugby in the grand scheme of things. And it takes its toll. I would probably wouldn't have been able to have such a rich conversation with you if it wasn't for everything I learned in the rugby environment. But I'm not sure if I would have had all the opportunities I've been given since finishing rugby, and the network that I have, because maybe is a lot of it because of it. Who knows? But it does take its toll. And transition is hard. And I think you just got to believe in yourself. I'm getting long winded, but I'm not 100% sure I would endorse it as a professional career.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah. And that's much better than work hard. So as advice, perfect, mate. Well, we will finish there because we run a little bit over. But thank you so much for joining me.
It's great.
Appreciate it.
Pleasure.
There we have it. Conor Gilsenan in all his glory. Thank you once again for listening all the way to the end of these episodes. And as you've shown that you're clearly a loyal listener, if you've got any feedback on any of the podcasts you've listened to so far, or anything you could share with me to help me make the podcast better, I would absolutely love to hear from you. So please do get in touch. Anyway, thank you very much and have a great day.